So today I want to show you a few techniques you can use to embrace the nature of chaos into your patches. We will do this while building a patch from scratch. These are the two modules we will be using for the chaos part. We have Glee and Frolic. Both are from the Sapphire collection. Something you can already notice is that chaos is not really random. You can see that there is a general direction to things. Everything is very much unpredictable, but still somewhat repetitive. This is the setup that I have here already just to save some time. I have here Clocked from Impromptu as my main clock module. I have here, of course, the Mind Meld mixer. And I have here Galaxy, which is a send reverb that I'm using here, again from the same collection, from the Sapphire collection. And I will be also using color coding. So I have here the cable color key from Inclan. And the first thing we can do, which is probably the most obvious one, is using chaos as a modulation source. Right, so let's start with Frolic. And just for fun, I will use also the tricorder module here, again from the same collection. If I just place it on the right, we can see the movement of chaos. Right, and let's start building our first voice. So we will use two VCV VCOs and then tune one, let's say, to A3. So if I right click the frequency controller, the frequency knob, and I enter A3, right, it will just be tuned to this note. The other one we will tune to E4. Again, so I just enter E4 and then it will tune itself. Maybe we can just, for fun, just detune them a bit for now. And we will crossfade between them with the fade module also from VCV. We will use once a saw wave, right? This will go to input 1, and once a square wave. This will go through a filter, and again I will use the one from VCV. We will send this through a low pass filter already to the mixer. Right, so now all the way left we have the saw wave, the A3 saw wave, all the way right. We have the E4 square wave, right? So we can cross fade between them. And let's really do this with the X output of Frolic, right? This will go to the CV input and open the attenuator all the way. Right, so now we crossfade between different oscillators that are tuned also differently. We can use the Z or Z output to control the filter. Right, something like this. And the Y output to modulate the panning directly here from the mixer. Right, so now we have also some panning modulation, and you can see the movement here. Again, it's not really random. You can see there is a general direction, but this is the beautiful thing about chaos. Now we can also use the X and Y to slowly detune the oscillators even more and create even more movement, right? So one will come from the X output, once from the Y, and open this just a bit through the FM input here with the attenuator, just a tiny bit, right, maybe 0.4%. You can already hear the detuning. Right, now this needs lots and lots of reverb. Again, I have here the send reverbs, or send reverb with the send mixer here. So let's add quite a lot. We can call this already maybe drone. Right, so this will be our first voice. And let's work on the second one. So I will mute this for a second, and I will also move this up just so we have a bit more space here to work. And for the second voice, we will use another common technique for creating melodies. Now let's start with the voice itself. We will use the VCO lab. This is a relatively new oscillator from Venom. Right, and for the chaotic source, in this case, we will use Glee. And again, just for fun, let's have a look at it also on this lovely scope here. Right, just to see how it moves. Maybe we can zoom out a bit. Something like this. Right, so again, we want to use this to generate notes. And for this, we will use a quantizer. I will use the one from Sikotzel. With this one, we can sort of sample or take snapshots of this chaotic signal and turn it into a pitch sequence. In this case, I will use different notes. So let's go with C, E, and A, right? We will go with just 3 notes for now. We will use the X output as our pitch information. This will go to the quantizer, and from there to the oscillator. Right, we will use the mix output. We have here various outputs here on this oscillator. Let's go with the mix output so we can mix a few waves. Right, take the level all the way up. And now I can add a bit of, let's say, sine and a bit of triangle. Maybe something like this. Right, and already on the quantizer itself, we can attenuate this chaotic signal. We have here the attenuator. So let's go down to about, let's say 34, 35%, right, just so the pitch is not going too high or too low. And again, I would like this to be more of a sequence, so we can use the clock to sort of sync the changes in notes. So let's go with a slower BPM, maybe somewhere around 85, 86, maybe 86. And we will set one clock multiplication of 2. Right, we have here the main clock will be quarter notes, and multiplied by 2 will give us eighth notes. Right, so if I send this to trigger the quantizer, now there will be a change in note only together with this clock multiplication. Right, as a sort of a sample and hold functionality. We can take here, in this case, the speed of chaos, the speed of glee a bit down, right? So there are less changes or fewer frequent changes. Right? Now to add again more movement, we will use the Y output to control the level of the mix. So if I take this back to 0 and open the attenuator, now this will come in and out. Right, we can use the Z to modulate the shape of the sine and the triangle. Again, this oscillator is very capable and very interesting. You can add lots of movement in all sorts of different places. Right, so this will slowly come in and out. Let's use another glee, right, another chaotic source. And use the X to modulate the phase. We have here also phase modulation of the sine, the Y to modulate the phase of the triangle. So again, we get a bit of a detuning even. Right, in this case, let's take the chaos all the way up, but again, also maybe a bit slower. And with the Z output here, or Z, again, it depends where you're coming from or where you live, we can bring in and out the saw wave. Right, again, we have levels for each wave. Right, so maybe, let's say, 50%. Right, so now the overall mix will come in and out, but also the saw wave will add more or less brightness, depending on the chaos. Right, now I will add some delay to this with the Surge XT delay. Right, so the mix will go to the delay, then to the mixer stereo in this case, sync this with the clock. Right, maybe add a bit more feedback, a bit more modulation. Right, again, let's add reverb, lots of reverb. Right, maybe call this sec or sick, and unmute also the first voice. Maybe take the drone level a bit down, let's say -6. Right, so again we have those voices cross-fading. The first voice, the second voice here is coming in and out, which is a sort of a sequence. Right, and let's use also the X output, right, from Glee, what we are using here for pitch information. We can use this to modulate the speed of the first frolic here, right, again, just to add a bit more movement, a bit more chaos to everything. Right, let's add also quickly some chords, and we will use here the second glide that we added before. We have also a polyphonic output, right? This will output the X, Y, and Z as a polyphonic signal, right, with 3 channels. So I will use another quantizer, right, just duplicate the one that I have here. For the voice itself, we will use the classic VCO, again from Surge XT, and also the Surge XT filter. Right, the polyphonic output will go as a pitch information to the quantizer. This will go to the oscillator. Right, and you can see we have 3 channels of polyphony, so we'll get eventually 3-note chords. Now let's make the routing here. If I right click the outputs, I can connect this directly to the oscillator left and right. And if I right click, not the oscillator, the filter, if I right click the filter outputs, right, we can send this directly to the mixer. Right, so now it's already attenuated. Again, we just duplicated what we had. Let's add a few more notes. So let's go, for example, with D and G. And again, let's use this sample and hold, this trigger input functionality. But in this case, let's make this happen a bit slower. So let's use a clock division of 16. Right, and this will trigger the quantizer. Get now 3-note chords. Let's add a few more voices of unison here on the oscillator. Let's say 5. And let's use another frolic to add some movement here, to add some modulation. And also here we can use the polyphonic output, so we get different modulation for each voice, right, for each channel on this polyphonic signal. So let's use this one to modulate the shape of the oscillator. With the Surge XT modules, you just have to click the input you want to use and then set the modulation amount, right, sort of map it. Right, and we can use another frolic. Let's duplicate this, again the polyphonic output to modulate the filter. And again, this will happen per voice. Right, maybe add a bit of resonance, just a bit of drive. Right, maybe take the speed a bit down on both, maybe a bit more chaos. Right, we can also cross modulate them, so the X or X will go to the speed of one and the X will go to the speed of the second one. Right, just cross modulate them, again just for fun, just to add a bit more movement. This needs lots and lots of reverb. Let's call this pad. Right, and add lots of reverb. Maybe we take the level also a bit down because we have polyphony, so it's a bit louder than usual. Right, maybe something like this. Right, so we also have chords. I will move also these 2 voices up. Again, just so we have a bit more space to work with. And now let's try and create some weird, funny noises. Let's use, just for texture, let's use another frolic. And for this we will use the VCV comparator, which will be here. Right, I will use, for example, the X output. This will go to the A input of the comparator. And now every time this signal, right, from the X output, in this case when it goes above the offset, which is set in this case to 0 volts, and as long as it stays there, as long as it stays also above 0 volts, we will get a gate. And let me really show you this also on the scope. Right, so this is the X output. Right, you can see it goes up and down, and this will be A bigger than B whenever A goes up or above 0, and as long as it stays there, opalach, you see, we get a gate. Again, it will stay open as long as it stays above 0 volts in this case. Right, so now we get a gate. And let's use this gate to ping a filter, and again to create a sort of texture, funny, weird noises. So we will use tangents for this from Volt, a filter from Volt. Again, we will use the bigger than to the bandpass filter, right, the bandpass input here. This will go to the mixer. Right, again we want to ping this filter, so let's take the resonance quite up. Maybe also the cutoff here. Right, and now we will get one click when the gate goes up and another one when it goes down, and I will shut up for now so you can hear it also. Right, so we get one click when it goes up, one click when it goes down, and we are pinging the filter this way. Right, and to make this even more funny, this is not funny enough, not funny at all for now, we will add a VCV delay. We will use the wet output, Opalach, the wet output, because we just need a fully wet, a fully processed signal. Right, take the delay time a bit down, lots and lots of feedback. Already you can hear this, I'm talking too much, so you can not hear this so much. Right, so this is more or less the sound we will get. Right, tone all the way up, so we get something a bit brighter. And now we can use the Y to modulate the filter. Right, the X will modulate the delay time. Right, we can create a sort of a feedback loop with a Z controlling or modulating the speed of the same module just for fun. Right, and again the Y to modulate the panning. Right, so again just for texture. Now on the mixer itself, if we right click this channel, we can add also a high pass filter. So I will add this all the way up, about 1000 Hz I guess, just to take the lows out. We can call this noise and add just a bit of reverb, no need for so much in this case. Right, maybe take the level a bit down so it's not so loud. Right, so we get some texture. Let's wait for it one more time. Very nice. And now let's quickly add also a bass. Right, we will go with Horus from CV Funk. And again, a relatively new oscillator. And for pitch information, we will extract the bass note from the chords that we have. For this, we will use the bass module from Sively. Right, this will extract the bass note from a polyphonic signal. So if I use the polyphony here from the quantizer, right, again we have 3 channels of polyphony. Right, in this case it will extract the lowest note and will limit it also to 1 octave, so we can use this perfectly for a bass voice. Right, this will go to the oscillator. The oscillator in this case is stereo. And let's take this 2 octaves down. Right, and this will output our bass notes. Let's wait for it. So we have some movement together with the chords. Let's add another glee for some movement. We can add modulation for the feedback, let's say, with X, for the phase with the Y, and maybe the spread with the Z or Z. Right, we can call this bass. Right, no need for a reverb in this case. Right, so we have also a simple bass voice that moves together with the chords. But let's create also another sequence that will be a bit more repetitive, so less random or less chaotic and a bit more stability. So for this we will use another frolic, right? And in this case we will use also a switch, a sequential switch, right? We will set this to 3 steps because we have the 3 outputs here, so we will use ones. Again, this will be pitch information. In this case, pitch is yellow. 1, 2, and 3, X, Y, and Z. Right, and again, we will need a quantizer. So I will use the second quantizer I have here. I will just duplicate this, right, just so we have a bit more notes. And again, already it's attenuated. For the voice itself, we will use the FM operator. Right, so the switch will go to the quantizer to the FM operator. We can already send this to the mixer. And again, we need now, in this case, with the FM operator, we need a trigger or a gate to trigger this voice. So I will use for this a clock multiplication of 4. Right, again, the main clock is quarter notes, multiplied by 2 is 8th notes, and multiplied by 4 we get 16th notes. So this will trigger, first of all, the switch. Right, so now basically I'm switching between the X, Y, and Z. This will also trigger the quantizer. So again, we get a change in notes only together with the clock. And this will also trigger our voice. Right, and we still get random notes because we have here lots and lots of movement. But for example, let's take the chaos all the way up, so it's even more chaotic, but take the speed all the way down. Right, so now it's almost frozen. We almost froze the movement of chaos. So we get something more repetitive until we take the speed up again and then down. We can sort of freeze the sequence. So again, let's use the same clock division of 16 to do this for us, but we will not send it directly. You will see soon enough also why. We will use an envelope. We will take the sustain all the way down, so there is no sustain to this envelope, but it will have a longer decay. So let's say of about 500 milliseconds or something like this. Right, and this we will use to modulate the speed. So we go to the speed, open the attenuator all the way, and now use the clock division to gate this envelope. Right now, this envelope will open the speed only for the duration of the decay. If I would use the clock division directly, you can see it stays open, it stays high for much longer, which means that the speed will open for much longer, and we will get too much movement. I want this just to be unfrozen and then frozen again. Just like this. So this is why I'm using an envelope and not the clock division directly. So now let's use another frolic and add movement, for example, to the feedback here. Right, maybe more chaos, a bit quicker. Right, let's modulate also the panning with the Y output. Call this FM op, add lots and lots of reverb. Very nice. Right, now this is still not good enough for me because I want this voice to come again in and out. This is always there in the background. I want to add more space to everything. So I will use another filter, another low pass filter, the one from VCV. Right, and now I can use this, right, to bring this voice in and out. Right, so let's use another frolic. Right, something like this. Right, a bit slower. So again, lots of chaos, lots of movement. We have chords, we have sequences, modulation, of course, chaotic modulation. And I hope you found this patch somewhat inspiring. Of course, there's a lot more you can do with frolic and glee and chaos in general. If you have more ideas, please share them with us in the comments. Thank you again so much for watching. Cheers!